We live in an age where pleasure is one click away, but fulfillment has never been further. The modern mind is overstimulated, undernourished, and disconnected from what truly matters. When we talk about the dark side of adult content, we're not merely discussing visuals or entertainment. We're discussing an addiction that hijacks the deepest neurological systems of the human brain. The first thing to understand is that this habit is not driven by desire. It's driven by dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. Every time a person watches explicit content, the brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter that gives a quick rush of excitement and anticipation. In a natural relationship, this dopamine surge is followed by oxytocin, a bonding chemical that connects you emotionally with another human being. But with artificial stimulation, that second part, the bonding, never comes. The brain keeps chasing the high without receiving the emotional nourishment that balances it. Over time, this creates a dopamine imbalance, making the brain crave more intense, more shocking, and more novel content to feel the same level of excitement. This is where the dark side begins. The more you consume, the less you feel. Your emotional threshold rises, and ordinary experiences, like a loving touch, deep conversation, or genuine attraction, no longer feel satisfying. You become emotionally numb. This is why people say, "I don't feel connected anymore," or "I'm losing interest in real relationships." Because the mind has been trained to respond to pixels, not people. The addiction is not about lust. It's about escape. Adult content provides an illusion of control. When life feels overwhelming, when emotional wounds are unhealed, when loneliness creeps in, when real intimacy feels too risky, the brain finds comfort in something predictable and accessible. There's no rejection, no vulnerability, no emotional investment, but what begins as a temporary escape quickly becomes a neurological prison. The mind associates relief with this habit, and the cycle repeats. The very thing that once offered comfort becomes the source of emptiness. From a psychological standpoint, this addiction works just like any other, whether it's substances, social media, or food. It's not the thing itself, it's the relationship you have with it. When you turn to something external to numb what's internal, you give your power away. You stop processing emotions and start suppressing them. You stop facing reality and start escaping it. Over time, your brain forgets how to produce pleasure naturally. You become dependent on external triggers for internal satisfaction. That's why people say, "I can't stop," because neurologically, their reward system has been reprogrammed. Now, here's where the deeper truth lies. Behind every addiction is a void. That void is not sexual, it's emotional. It's the absence of self, connection, purpose, and love. When people can't connect with themselves, they unconsciously seek intensity to replace intimacy. They confuse stimulation with satisfaction, but stimulation fades, it always does. What remains afterward is the silence of guilt, shame, and emotional fatigue. And that guilt is dangerous, because guilt keeps you trapped. The more you hate yourself for the habit, the more your brain craves another escape from that feeling. So you go back to the same source that caused the pain, hoping it will remove the pain. But it doesn't. It deepens it. That's the paradox of addiction. The solution becomes the problem. What's even more tragic is that people begin to internalize this as identity. They say, "This is just who I am," or "It's just how men or women are." No, this is not identity. It's a pattern. And patterns can be unlearned. The brain that was once wired into addiction can be rewired into awareness, self-control, and emotional strength. But the first step is understanding. Understanding that your brain has been manipulated by a system designed to profit from your attention. The more time you spend on it, the more power you give away. Awareness is not judgment, it's power. When you see the pattern for what it is, you break its spell. The next time the urge appears, don't fight it with shame. Observe it with curiosity. Ask yourself, what am I trying to escape right now? Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's rejection. Maybe it's boredom. When you name the emotion, you take back control from the impulse. That's emotional mastery, not suppression, but self-understanding. You cannot heal what you don't face, and you cannot face what you keep judging. Healing begins when you understand that the craving is not for pleasure, it's for connection, peace, and authenticity. What you're really searching for is yourself. When you rise above this habit, you don't just quit an addiction. You reclaim your energy, your confidence, your focus, and your inner peace. You return to a version of yourself that is powerful, grounded, and emotionally alive. Because the truth is, you were never addicted to the content. You were addicted to the feeling of escaping yourself. Once you reconnect with yourself through awareness, purpose, and emotional healing, the illusion loses its power. We live in a world where the search for pleasure has replaced the search for peace. And the dark side of adult content is not about what you see on the screen. It's about what happens in your mind every time you click. It is about how your brain, your emotions, and your sense of self-worth slowly begin to change without you even realizing it. When you watch such content, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that is released when you achieve something meaningful, fall in love, or experience excitement. But the problem is that this kind of dopamine is not earned, it is artificially triggered. It's like borrowing happiness from the future. Each time you consume that content, you are giving your brain an instant high without any emotional depth or real connection behind it. Over time, your brain becomes conditioned to expect this fast, intense rush. The natural sources of pleasure, meaningful conversations, love, creativity, and self-growth begin to lose their charm because they don't release dopamine as quickly or as powerfully. You start to feel bored with normal life. The human brain is designed for balance, for cycles of excitement and calm. But adult content breaks that rhythm. It floods your reward system with dopamine and then leaves you emotionally empty. The result is not pleasure, it's numbness. You see, this addiction is not just about desire. It's about escape. People turn to this habit when they feel emotionally disconnected, when they are hurt, lonely, or unfulfilled. The content becomes a place where they can control everything. There is no rejection, no risk, no emotional vulnerability. It's easy, fast, and private. But that sense of control is an illusion, because what you think you control is actually controlling you. Each click rewires your brain just a little more, teaching it that instant stimulation is the fastest route to relief. But relief without meaning is temporary, and that is where the dark cycle begins. The craving for more, stronger, different, new. The same way someone addicted to sugar needs more sweets to feel the same satisfaction, the brain addicted to adult content needs more extreme stimulation to feel alive. The deeper truth is that behind every addiction lies emotional pain. A void. That void is not physical, it's emotional. When someone watches that kind of content, they are not just satisfying lust, they are soothing loneliness, rejection, or insecurity. The brain begins to associate comfort with stimulation, not with connection. And the more it happens, the harder it becomes to connect with real people, because real connection takes effort, patience, and emotional openness, things that an overstimulated brain finds too slow and too uncertain. So the person retreats further into isolation, chasing stimulation while running away from emotion. It becomes a vicious loop. The more disconnected you feel, the more you consume, the more disconnected you become. What makes it even darker is the shame that follows. Most people who struggle with this habit know deep down that it's hurting them. They feel guilt, disgust, or weakness afterward. That guilt creates emotional pain, and because they don't know how to deal with that pain, they seek the same escape again to numb it. That's the cruel paradox. You run back to the same thing that caused your pain to avoid feeling it. This cycle of guilt and escape is what keeps millions trapped. The real problem isn't the content itself, It's the relationship you've built with it. It's become a coping mechanism for emotions you don't want to feel. You see, when you watch adult content, you get dopamine without oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone, the one released when you feel loved, touched, or emotionally connected. In natural intimacy, dopamine and oxytocin work together. Pleasure with connection, excitement with calm, desire with safety. But when you rely on artificial stimulation, your brain gets the dopamine rush without the oxytocin warmth. Over time, you crave the high but forget how to feel connection. You stop desiring people and start desiring the idea of pleasure. You stop craving intimacy and start craving intensity. The damage doesn't stop at the brain. It reaches into your self-esteem. People begin to feel that they can't control themselves. They start believing they are weak or broken, but that's not true. You are not broken. Your brain is just wired for survival, and right now it's surviving through stimulation. The moment you understand that, you take your power back. Awareness is the first step to healing. You can't change what you don't understand, and you can't heal what you keep judging. When you see this pattern not as sin but as suffering, not as weakness but as conditioning, then you begin to rise above it. Ask yourself, what am I trying to escape when I do this? Is it loneliness? Is it rejection? Is it boredom? The moment you identify the emotion behind the urge, you separate yourself from the urge. You become the observer instead of the participant. And that is where freedom begins. Healing is not about suppressing the desire. It's about understanding the emotion beneath it. Once you reconnect with yourself emotionally, through stillness, purpose, creativity, and love, the need for artificial pleasure starts to fade. Your brain is not your enemy, it is your student. It learns what you teach it. If you teach it to seek comfort in screens, it will obey. If you teach it to seek peace in purpose, connection, and discipline, it will adapt. That's the beauty of neuroplasticity. Your brain can be rewired at any moment if you make the decision to live consciously. The same energy that was trapped in addiction can be transformed into confidence, focus, and strength. The truth is, you were never addicted to the content. You were addicted to escaping yourself. You were trying to silence a pain that needed to be heard. And the moment you stop running from yourself, the moment you face your emotions, that addiction loses its power. Because you no longer need an illusion to feel alive. You become alive. The journey of breaking free is not about discipline alone. It's about awareness, compassion, and connection with your own soul. When you truly understand that, you'll stop chasing artificial highs and start living from a place of peace. The dark side of adult content lies not in what we see, but in what it does to the brain. Each time you watch it, your mind releases dopamine, the chemical of reward and excitement. This rush feels good for a moment, but it's artificial. It doesn't come from love, connection, or achievement. It's a shortcut to pleasure, and like every shortcut, it skips what truly matters. Over time, the brain becomes dependent on that shortcut, needing more intensity to feel the same thrill. Slowly, real life starts to feel dull. Normal relationships lose their spark, emotions feel muted, and attention weakens. You're no longer chasing desire, you're chasing escape. The addiction isn't about lust, it's about avoidance. People use adult content to escape loneliness, stress, or emotional pain. It feels safe because there's no rejection, no judgment, no vulnerability, but that safety is false. The same screen that gives temporary comfort takes away long-term peace. It rewires the brain to crave stimulation instead of connection. The pleasure fades, but the emptiness remains. Then comes guilt, the silent shame that makes you feel weak. That guilt deepens the emotional pain, and to escape it, you repeat the same habit. It becomes a cycle of relief and regret. The truth is, this isn't about moral failure, it's about emotional disconnection. The brain is simply responding to what it has been taught. But awareness changes everything. When you understand that the craving is not for pleasure, but for peace, you begin to take your power back. Healing starts when you stop fighting the urge and start listening to what it's trying to cover: loneliness, fear, or sadness. When you reconnect